A beautiful nun seeks the meaning of life in a remote convent, only to find herself at the center of a miracle. However, she soon finds out that not all miracles come from the heavens. In a convent, Sister Mary prays before the image of Mother Mary and sheds her habit. She then moves the portrait to cover writing in the wall before sneaking into the Mother Superior's bedroom to steal the keys. Soon, she bursts out of the main doors and runs to the locked gate. The lights in the convent turn on as she desperately scrambles for the keys to unlock the gates. However, 4 dark figures loom closer, making the woman panic. Mary opens the gates, but the chains keep it from opening fully. Out of desperation, Mary squeezes through the gap. Just as she thinks she's free, one of the figures grabs her foot and pulls her leg, breaking it between the bars. Later into the night, Mary lights a match and finds herself inside a wooden box that won't budge open. She realizes that she's buried alive and cries for help, but nobody answers. Sometime later, Cecilia waits inside a customs office as an officer inspects her luggage. Another inspector arrives, commenting that she doesn't have a return ticket from the convent that sent her here. They confirm that she hasn't learned Italian yet before making comments about her wasting her beauty to join a convent. One of them then wonders if it was a hard decision to become a nun, but Cecilia disagrees. With that, the officer approves her papers. Outside the customs office, a man named Enzo fetches her and takes her on a long drive past the city into the remote convent of Our Lady of Sorrows. Inside the convent, Mother Superior greets her and compliments her in Italian. Cecilia looks confused, so Sister Isabel translates for her. The head nun then orders Isabel to take Cecilia to her room. The nun refuses, saying she has to help prepare for tonight's celebration, but Mother Superior scolds her, leaving Isabel with no choice but to concede. On their way to her room, she explains to Cecilia that this convent was built on top of St. Stephen's catacomb for elderly nuns in hospice care. Cecilia gets curious about the catacomb, but Isabel asserts that it's off limits. They pass through a dining hall, and Isabel points out that one of the nuns has a terminal tumor and is expected to pass away next week. Cecilia comments how casually she spoke about death. So Isabel reasons that it's a common thing there. A delusional nun then grabs Isabel and asks for her father. The impassive nun guides her into another room while advising Cecilia to play along when the elderly get delusional. She takes the novice nun into her spacious room and Cecilia thanks her, saying she's honored to serve. Isabel finds her romantic ways sweet, but warns that it has no place there because of their difficult jobs. Isabel tells her that she can still refuse her vows and leave, but Cecilia is adamant to stay. Taken aback, Isabel merely leaves. Later, Cecilia uses the toilet when another novice nun, Sister Gwen, saunters in to smoke. The two share their past experience with nunneries, with Cecilia sharing that her parish closed due to low attendance. Father Tedeschi recruited her, and Gwen comments how that man is talented at seeking head cases or runaways. Curious, Cecilia asks which one Gwen is, and the woman answers she's both. In the late afternoon, Cecilia joins the other novices as they walk down the aisle with candle in hand. Father Sal Tedeschi greets Cecilia, meeting the woman he recruited for the first time. The nuns soon take their place as Cardinal Franco Merola starts the ceremony and announces their marriage and commitment to God. Sal translates the vows, and Cecilia smiles as she gazes at him. The cardinal then offers his ring to her, and after hesitating, Cecilia kisses the ring. Afterward, the convent shares dinner together. During this, Sal shares to Cecilia that he used to be a man of science until God showed him the way. He then asks about her story, so Cecilia admits that she was dead for 7 minutes after she fell into a frozen lake. Paramedics were able to revive her, making her believe that God saved her for a reason. However, she's still searching for what that reason is. The woman then excuses herself to the bathroom, and while there, she hears sobbing prayers. She follows it back to the chapel and into a room beneath the altar where a prone woman is lost in prayer. When Cecilia checks on her, she finds that the woman's face is behind a red mask, startling her. Mother Superior appears and assures the woman that the nun is simply lost in prayer. From the altar, she then takes a large, gnarled nail and reminds Cecilia that Jesus suffered on the cross. Therefore, suffering is love. The older woman hands her the nail and gestures at the statue behind them, hinting that the nail is one of those that held Jesus at the cross. As this dawns on her, Cecilia hears whispers in her mind, overwhelming her until she faints. The next day, Cecilia makes a confession, claiming that she fainted after drinking too much wine and thus disgracing herself before the Mother Superior. Despite her confession, the priest in the booth merely stares at her before fading into the shadows. Confused, Cecilia peers into the division between them when Hans suddenly sees her from behind. The woman is slammed onto a bed and hands grab her face as 4 looming nuns with red-masked faces approach. Cecilia remains helpless as they stab her with a dagger. Cecilia wakes from this nightmare, but as she gathers herself, she sees Mother Superior by the doorway, breathing and staring. However, when she turns the lamp on, the apparition disappears. After breakfast that day, Mother Superior addresses the novices, but Cecilia doesn't understand her and asks Gwen. The woman jokes that her confusion is due to drinking too much wine, making Cecilia chuckle. Because of this, Mother Superior scolds them. The head nun then assigns Isabel to mentor Gwen and Cecilia, among others. For the next few days, Isabel teaches them how to do their jobs at the convent. This included caring for the bedridden nuns under Dr. Gallo's care, doing laundry, and preparing livestock. Despite the hard work, Gwen and Cecilia form a good friendship. One day, while hanging sheets, Cecilia spots Isabel glaring at her, only to disappear. That night, she wakes up to one of the elderly nuns cutting her hair. Despite the fright, Cecilia guides the ailing woman back to bed. As she tucks her to bed, however, the caretaker sees strange cross marks branded under her feet. The next day, Cecilia recounts what happened to Gwen, though the woman comments that the event is still better than her experiences in her previous convent. A boy used to hurt her, so Gwen went to a support group led by nuns. She saw how decent their life is and joined them regardless of her beliefs. Suddenly, Cecilia hurls, so she's sent to the doctor. While waiting for her test results later, she gazes out the window and finds one of the nuns with the red masks roaming outside. A crow suddenly crashes on the glass, making Cecilia recoil. Just then, Mother Superior summons her, but Cecilia checks on the dead bird before following the woman. Cecilia faces Dr. Gallo, Cardinal Franco, and Father Sal along with Mother Superior, who interrogate about her experience with a man. She firmly says no, and Dr. Gallo confirms that he examined her upon her arrival, noting that she was intact. Mother Superior also notes that they haven't had visitors recently, before putting away a red envelope into a drawer. Frightened, Cecilia asks for an explanation. To confirm their suspicion, Isabel later rolls an ultrasound scanner into the clinic, and as they check her, they confirm that Cecilia is pregnant. Cardinal Franco declares that this child is conceived without sin, and thus, a miracle. Despite their positive views on this, Cecilia can only tearfully look at the ultrasound image of her child. Confused, Cecilia later asks Sal why she was chosen. The man reminds her that she was searching for the reason why God saved her years ago. He then declares that God blesses the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. With this, Cecilia is soon celebrated, garbed like a saint before the altar while the nuns sing in praise of her. Yet, the soon-to-be mother holds back her tears, still confused and afraid about what's happening. Months later, she experiences morning sickness and loses a tooth in the process. She then heads to the dining room, and all the nuns except Gwen stand up to greet her. The woman still sits beside Gwen, but the divide between them is reinforced as Mother Superior hands a tray of fine food to Cecilia, saying that her only job is to nourish her baby. Hearing this, her friend bitterly jokes that they'll soon name her Mary. Later, Cecilia relaxes in the bathing pool when Isabel tries to drown her. The woman fights for her life while her attacker yells that it should have been her who received the miracle. Nuns soon rush to pull Isabel out as she screams that they have to try with her again. Because of the attack, Cecilia sees Dr. Gallo, who confirms that her child is okay. However, the mother tells them that she's not okay, worrying about what Isabel said. Father Sal merely claims that Isabel is mentally ill before promising her that the attack won't happen again. Still, Cecilia decides to see a different doctor in a real hospital. However, they discourage her since word of her miraculous pregnancy may spread, so Sal tells her to stay until the Savior is born. Despite their promise of safety, Cecilia soon witnesses a nun falling from the roof. To her horror, it's Isabel with her face completely destroyed. During Isabel's funeral, Gwen quietly shares her suspicions of the convent to Cecilia, reasoning that her friend is 5 months pregnant with no hospital attention. Their conversation is interrupted when Father Sal approaches them, asking what's wrong. Pissed, Gwen calls out the others, pointing out that they act as if everything is normal despite Cecilia's pregnancy and Isabel's passing. She orders the nuns to open their eyes and calls out their superiors for manipulating them. Amidst her rants, Sal and the staff soon drag her away while Cecilia can only watch. That night, Cecilia thinks about Gwen's accusation when, suddenly, one of the chains holding the portrait of Mother Mary snaps. To her surprise, Cecilia sees a Bible passage written on the wall. She looks it up and discovers that it's about how Satan masquerades as an angel of light. Cecilia goes to Gwen's room to share this with her friend, but finds that she's not there. Suspicious, Cecilia then sneaks into the main office and tries to retrieve the red envelope that Mother Superior hid months ago. Inside is an article about her accident and her DNA tests. Just then, she hears shouting from afar and follows into one of the chambers outside. Gwen's voice echoes from behind the wooden door, and when she peeks in, she witnesses the red-masked nuns cutting her friend's tongue. Cecilia backs away in fear when a hand grabs her from behind, revealing the delusional nun. She gives her an effigy made from Cecilia's hair and calls her blessed. The novice nun begs her help to leave this convent, but the nun frowns, whispering that she will never leave. That morning, Cecilia wakes to her womb bleeding. The convent's superiors panic since Dr. Gallo isn't around, so Sal and Enzo drive her to the hospital. Hoping for the child's safety, Mother Superior prays over Cecilia's bloody sheets, only to discover the body of a beheaded chicken under the bed. Soon enough, Sal receives a call during the drive, making him stare at Cecilia. Now aware that she's faking her condition, the man tells the driver to stop the car. Cecilia panics as she realizes figures that they found out her pretense, so she bolts out of the car and into the open fields until Sal and Enzo catches her. That afternoon, Mother Superior unforcefully cleans her, demanding her to explain her actions. Cecilia merely utters that God won't forgive them for what they're doing to her, earning her a slap on the face. Later, Cecilia is shackled on a wheelchair before an altar. Sal approaches her while putting on his gloves, apologizing for scaring her. He then takes the nail at the altar and presents it to Cecilia, saying they found remnants of blood and bone on it. It gave them the genetic code of the Messiah, and thus the key to resurrecting him. She calls him crazy, so he wheels her down the convent, revealing jars containing their failed attempts. He explains that they have been working on his resurrection for 20 years, and now they found the perfect vessel in Cecilia. They then enter a laboratory where Enzo sits by a steel hearth. There, Sal reveals that he left the field of genetics because his peers disapproved of his experiments. Cecilia claims that he's playing God, but he denies it, saying his calling is to persevere until he succeeds, and her calling is to birth this child. The nun refuses this, so they brand her feet with a cross and lock her in her room. As her fate and imprisonment dawns on her, she wails at the door. By her third trimester, Cecilia visits the confessional with Cardinal Franco. Instead of confessing, she asks when they targeted her and what will happen to her after the birth. The Cardinal doesn't answer, so Cecilia voices out that this is not God's work. Cardinal Franco merely replies that if this isn't God's work, then why doesn't he stop them? Later, Dr. Gallo uses the ultrasound machine to inspect the baby with Mother Superior. He then leaves the room to get medications, though Cecilia notices that he left the door ajar. While waiting, Mother Superior delights at the image of the child, saying that it will save them all. While she's distracted, however, Cecilia grabs a metal cross and bludgeons her to death. Cecilia then tries to leave, only for her water to break. She curses but continues walking out. Elsewhere, Cardinal Franco watches the nuns sing from a balcony. Cecilia suddenly strangles him with a rosary until his last gurgled breath. Dr. Gallo witnesses the gruesome event and runs, so Cecilia grabs Franco's lighter and keys before running off. She reaches the main chapel, pauses because of her contractions, then grabs the nail. Cecilia then reaches Sal's lab and finds bottles of alcohol. She douses the floor and his equipment with it, then turns as the former geneticist arrives. Seeing her about to torch his work, he promises her that she only needs to deliver the savior. Just then, Cecilia curbs from the contractions, and Sal uses this chance to grapple her, trying to get the lighter. However, she smashes a glass cylinder on his head before running and locking him in his lab. Sal manages to grab her hair through the grates and pull her to the door, so Cecilia ignites the lighter and drops it by the door. This sets Sal and the room on fire. Soon, however, she hears a fire extinguisher stifle the flames before Sal slams himself on the door, crashing it open. Because of this, Cecilia escapes into the catacombs. She enters the long, winding tunnels with Sal on her tail. Soon, Cecilia finds an empty room and hides inside. However, She struggles to keep quiet as Sal passes by with a lantern. When he disappears, Cecilia opens her flashlight, only to find Gwen's mangled body next to her. The nun flees while her contractions worsen. Eventually, she finds a hole leading outside. But as she clambers into the hole, she gets pulled back. A burnt Sal pins her down and begins praying while ripping her dress to expose her belly. He then produces a scalpel and cuts her. She yells in agony but fights to retrieve the nail in her pocket and stabs Sal on the neck, ending him. Covered in blood, she finally leaves the tunnel and emerges in the open air outside the convent. She then props herself on the wall and screams with all her might to birth the child. Soon, the infant emerges, and the new mother can only stare at the bloody abomination. Seeing the culmination of all the pain and suffering this convent had delivered to the innocent, and those who only wished to seek God, she takes a large rock and slams it on the gurgling being, ending the story of the supposed Messiah.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.